Potential benefits of the quantified era. You know, I'm with you on there. I think at some point in time we will have to have an era where people will, through wearable devices, embedded devices, etc., have a health status. And I personally, I believe that should be entirely voluntary, and people should be made aware of the downside of not agreeing to share that data. And the biggest downside, as I think you just indicated, is that if you develop a medical condition, you get early warning of it if you've got all these measurements and devices. So when you go for treatment or diagnosis, the doctor, the physician, has a much better judgment of what needs to be done and what you are. If you don't collect that data, then all these measurements have got to be done at the time, with a risk of not having any historical data to support them.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if that data is being streamed through, I mean, the Germans some years ago, and it's quite a few years ago now, they have a thing called the biolab, and you did what you did in the laboratory in the morning. The contents were analysed digitally and sent to somebody at a cheaper economy. That was analysed, and if you had a potential condition, it was sent back to a local clinic, and someone turned up at your door with a potential remedy. So, you know, you're interdicting issues raising really quickly. And of course, that reduces the cost and keeps you well longer. So it's good for both sides. And if you choose not to, and there will be plenty of people, you know, we've seen every single stage of resistance to technology, and very often it's reasonably understood why there's resistance, but ultimately we come to control it and manage it and absorb it into our lives. But there will be those who won't. And of course, you know, you might pick up a big bill when you turn out with a big lump or a bump, which actually could have been identified at cellular level almost. By the way, those small devices, they are working on getting them down to capillary level size. They weren't a few years ago when I last gave a real look at these things. They weren't quite a capillary size, but once they get to capillary size, they can get anywhere in the body pretty much. So that's quite good.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure about the biolab, but maybe that is a good point to conclude our discussion. I have my reservations about that. But no, have you got any final points you want to make, David, before we bring it to a close?
I suppose, like every time, it's really about resistance. It's understanding what these things are. And just a little comment on the side. You know, people are getting very excited about the existential threat of AI because you've got, let's say, OpenAI's ChatGPT or GPT-4 that is simulating human behavior. I mean, it's a staggeringly long way away from having any original thought. It's all based on existing, very smart algorithms on existing data. So people are being appointed at government level to be, responsible for containing the potential of AI right now. And, you know, we're way too early. You know, general artificial intelligence is still quite a few years away. And of course, you need to gently monitor what it's likely to do. And in the same way with AI, you know, before we end up with, 500 zettabytes of data produced by these things every year, or in total, or 500 yottabytes, which is the next stage we'll get to in the next 20 years, then we need to work out security. Let's start pumping out data that there's some agreed form of security around it, as opposed to just generally in whatever the last coder decided was a reasonable format and pushes it out the door.
Yes, I think that's a suitable note to conclude on. Just one thing to reflect on, looking at digital data, this massive amount that's currently stored and is going to be stored. In the 1970s, in the era of the mainframes and IBM dominance, there was probably less data stored in the whole world than there is on my smartphone in 2000. And that's happened within a period of 30 or 40 years. and it's just accelerating and exponentially. It's quite staggering. So thank you very much for your time, David, and I look forward to our next discussion and debate on how these technologies are going to shape our lives. Thank you.
Thanks, David.